What's going on, guys? Motivated Jay here, back with Quarantine Correctives, and today we're going to talk about hip mobility across all populations. We're going to talk about athlete hip mobility, the importance of it. We're going to talk about external rotator stretches, internal rotator activation, and we'll probably throw in some abductor and adductor work if we had enough time. So anyways, if you've been experiencing any hip problems, hamstring problems, pain, lower back pain, if you've been experiencing tight hips, stiffness, then definitely pay attention to this, because what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about releasing some tension in the external rotators and then activating the internal rotators. Real quick on that, based off of the other quarantine corrective videos, you might have been able to get a trend. We tend to release the tension in the tight muscle group, and then we'll go ahead and activate the opposing muscle group. And I'll show you a little bit more what that means today. So anyways, we went over the issue. Now we're going to go over how you get it. How you get this tightness, how you get this limitation, just depends on what your activity level is. You can get it from overuse. If you're an athlete or you're someone that goes to the gym, you can get it from going and using these muscle groups all the time, or just like we're in quarantine right now, you can get it from not moving at all, right? So being too inactive or being too overactive of these muscle groups can cause you to have tight hips. So regardless of what the case is, we're gonna go ahead and attack that today, okay? The limitations and issues that arise from this tightness, hip stiffness, can include anything from hip pain, low back pain, hamstring pain. For athletes, an inability to produce power in their certain sport, a limited range of motion within their sport's demands. So to get into an athletic movement, athletic stance, or a stance inside the weight room. So across the board, it's just going to limit you in your overall performance in the weight room and outside in the field. How are we going to attack it today? So we're going to attack, first we're going to start off with some external rotator stretches, right? External rotator and abduction stretches. So we're going to stretch the piriformis. The piriformis is one of the muscle groups that you have back here. It's technically considered an external and internal rotator muscle. And it's also mainly considered an abduction muscle. Abduction just means away from the midline. So I'm moving my femur, right, my thigh outside away from the midline. And then internal rotation would just be me rotating my hip in, and this would be rotating out. So just this bone here rotating inwards or rotating outwards, internal, external, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start off with the stretch, a piriformis stretch, external rotator, and abduction stretch. So first what we're gonna do is get into an athlete's plank. We're gonna go ahead and cross the body with whatever leg we wanna stretch, and then we're gonna go ahead and slide back into it, and then get nice and low. As low as we can. We're gonna hold this position for about 30 to 35 seconds, just like we do every other stretch. We're gonna do both sides, and then we're gonna make sure that we breathe throughout the whole movement. And then once we finish that one side, we'll go to the other side. Now with this one, make sure that you're not just dropping straight down into it. Make sure that you actually slide back into the movement, so you actually get that good stretch, okay? Now, I don't want to go into too much of what that stretch looks like. I want to focus more on the activation piece. But essentially, that stretch is going to be really important. I would do about 2 sets. I would do about minimum 1 set, aim for 2 sets, 30 seconds minimum each side. Now, if that is too tough for you and you can't get down on the ground, I would come up on a couch, come up on a chair. And another way we can get this stretch from the external rotators and the adductors is go ahead and place your ankle on top of your knee, on top of your other knee. Your knee can be at 90 degrees, right? And now here, I'm in external rotation, right? And now I'm gonna go ahead and push this knee down and also lean forward, right? So again, same rep scheme as the pigeon stretch, right? So now what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna show you guys the more important part. So we go ahead and release the muscle group, right? Release the muscle group. We didn't do the whole stretch, but you guys do the 1 to 2 sets of 30 seconds each side on your own. And now we're gonna go ahead and activate the internal muscle group. Or excuse me, the opposing muscle group, which in this case would be the adductors, and the internal rotators. So very important on this one that we get 90 degrees in the hips, 90 degrees in the knees. I'm using a pillow today, but you can use anything that's pretty thick. You can use a foam roller. Ideally you would use a foam roller, but now that we're all in quarantine, I want to use something that majority of you guys have at home, right? So you can also use the pillow. I'm just gonna use this pillow in between my knees. Make sure I'm 90. And now the internal rotator, right? Real quick before I start this, the internal rotator is gonna move inwards. So it doesn't matter where the orientation of my body is, as long as my femur, which is this bone here, my thigh bone, rotates inwards, okay? And the adduction is the opposite of abduction. Abduction is outwards, adduction is inwards, okay? Adduction towards the midline, abduction towards away from the midline, okay? So again, I'm back in here, right? 90 degrees, my back is flat. And what I'm gonna do here is first, I'm gonna go ahead and squeeze the pillow, right? Or the foam roller, whatever I have. Now from this position, I want to internally rotate my hip, internally rotate my femur, excuse me. And now I'm gonna go ahead and internally rotate. You guys see how my knee is still crushing the pillow, but my ankle is coming up high. See, I'm shaking a little bit because my internal rotation is the greatest either. So now I'm gonna come back down. Now I'm gonna come back up, squeeze, and then internally rotate. I'm gonna hold for 1, 2, 3 seconds. I would do this for minimum 2 sets, minimum of 5 reps, and hold at least 3 seconds each rep up at the top. Okay? Make sure you do both sides. Now, what do you want to look out for? What do you want to make sure that you don't do? Right? You want to make sure that your hips are not lower than 90 degrees, right? You want to make sure that 90 degrees. You want to make sure that your knees are preferably at 90 degrees. You also want to make sure that you're not arching your back as you're doing this. Well, when you're doing the adduction and the internal rotation, you're not compensating with your back and arching your low back as you internally rotate, right? You also want to make sure that you're really internally rotating and not just doing abduction, right? Straight abduction would be, again, moving that thigh bone away from the midline, right? So this is something you don't want to do. We want to get the internal rotation aspect out of it, okay? Now, why are we focusing on the internal rotation, right? What's gonna happen if we don't fix this? What's gonna happen if we don't release the tension in our tight external rotators and we don't activate these internal rotators? Hamstring issues, they're related to groin issues, and then they can also lead all the way up into the low back. So essentially, if we have a problem in the hip, you can start having problems anywhere above, anywhere beneath, right? So a lot of the people start feeling problems in their knees and they'll think it's something that's going on with their knees, but essentially it came straight from the hip, right? Or they'll start feeling problems in the low back, and then they'll feel where near their sciatica, and then they don't realize that it's still originating from the hip. I think that's gonna be it for today. I hope I made myself clear. The goal for you guys is to keep you guys on the field as long as possible, to keep you guys performing at peak performance at all times. And if you got these two issues, one or the other, or both of them combined, your performance will definitely be limited, and then your way to the training table is probably gonna be a lot quicker than you want. All right, so I appreciate you guys taking a look at this, watching this. If you like the video, go ahead and like the video. If you know somebody that can take some benefit from this video, go ahead and share it. And I appreciate you guys. Subscribe, stay motivated.